Hello, everybody, and welcome to part two. Hopefully, you all watched part one of the multidimensional soul with Rob Lomax and myself, Gary, from Alternative Interactions. Part one was fascinating, and part two continues just where we left off. We actually recorded and it lasted for over 2 hours. Far too much information to be absorbed in one show, so we decided to cut it into two. I hope you enjoyed part two as much as you did part one. And so it only leaves me to say, on with the show. I've got two things while we're still on this multidimensional stuff. Before we move off that, I want to talk about toroidal fields. Now, I personally see these frequencies, these energies, as toroidal fields. And I think we have my understanding, and I'd like to ask if my understanding is correct. Every single individual person has their own unique vibrational frequency toroidal field that interacts with everybody else's toroidal field as part of the Earth's toroidal field, as part of the trees, the grass, birds, bees. And this toroidal field is the consciousness energy of flux that allows us to create the solid via the fact that when we observe a toroidal field, as in the double slit experiment, we then create the reality because the toroidal field will then vibrationally change into the frequency that makes us then believe that I am sitting in front of Robert and I can see Robert, because my expectation of you is your toroidal field gives you the shape and the density that I can then, my brain can then work out is, or decide is what you look like. Would that be correct? Is the toroidal field concept I have right, or am I slightly wrong or completely off, please?
Wonderfully said. I would like to add some humour, for we're not devoid of humour. What can I say? I am speechless.
Thank you very much. So, for those of my audience that have watched my stuff previously, when I'm talking about the crystalline code, the Chris code, the double slit experiment, the waveform, and how it relates to toroidal fields of consciousness, this is what I've kind of been working on. And this is the first time I've actually ever asked Robert, Antemedi, or Olaka this question. And I think it's really interesting that for me, it's a validation of my thought process. And even though it's my thought process, technically I've created that as well because I've been thinking about it. So when we understand how it works, the fact that I thought about it, put it together, and then so have created it, then it becomes a reality. So I have created a reality via looking at this and thinking about this almost as well, which is a bit of a mind bender for many of you, but hopefully you'll understand that concept.
Yeah, and this is Robert now. It was interesting that in a conversation with Gary about those two concepts, that very evening I had a lot of disturbed sleep. I was somewhere else, and we'll talk about traveling through portals to etheric realms in our sleep and what we do in our other higher dimensional consciousness. But I came back with memories of these graphs of numbers, some with even numbers on the end, some with odds, and they were shaped in a particular direction. And when I spoke to Gary the following day, there and behold, he was able to show me these same figures that I was trying to get my head round in my human form. And there it was as an explanation. So, from the Robert part of me that helped to show me as a this experience that the information that Gary was saying was correct, because they were trying to say the same thing to me, but trying to filter out that complex information and have it in some form that I, as Robert, could understand the following day. It didn't meet the mustard, but it was part of it, because Gary was able to provide his understanding, which he'd worked at for a long time and research, and it just all made sense.
And we are talking about the Fibonacci and the crystalline code number sequences that I've been working on to try and understand and express the split that we're going to have. And we will definitely be getting into that rabbit hole later on, if not in other programs, because I think it's a very, very interesting one. Now, you mentioned memories, or Antemedi was talking about memories changing. We have quite a big thing that we've looked at previously, and it's not a hot topic at the moment, but it certainly has been, and that's something that we call the Mandela Effect. Now, the Mandela Effect means that our memories of certain things from our childhood have changed when you go onto the internet and ask. So, a very good example of that would be the Monopoly board. The guy with the hat on the front of the Monopoly board always had a monocle. In my childhood, he had a monocle. The modern Monopoly board has no monocle with the man with the top hat. And if you search on the internet will tell you that Monopoly never ever had a board game with the top hat man having a monocle. That's just one very, very basic, simple example of that. So we call this the Mandela effect. What you described with memories changing, because this can be quite a big collective memory. You can have like 90+% of the population remembering the same thing that's now not a reality here. Now, is that a memory thing, or is that a consciousness shift in a different dimensional frequency that we've gone into, where the reality of that different frequency or reality that is actually correct, and it's because we are traveling in a toroidal field, like a twister, an energy field, going up into different timelines, and so experiencing different collective conscious memory points that are part of that new timeline. It's a very long-winded way of asking something. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think your question in itself is an answer, because the things that you have said are in fact as much of a statement. But what you're saying is, or what you're asking is, an explanation for those and how they are.
Yes.
If we take I keep using the word our, because I see myself as much a part of Robert, because my consciousness is within him. So the words me, our, and whether I'm Antemedi or Robert are actually, from my point of view, meaningless. You are energy and you are information. Through energy, you have your experience and you create, as we said, your experience in your holographic world. Time in that essence doesn't exist, and you've probably heard this many times before. But because you live in a world with time, time is a program, gravity is a program, so time doesn't need to exist, gravity doesn't need to exist if the programs are changed. But in order to have an experience, the best way to have an experience is a linear experience where it feels as if something grows. But the way in which the universe grows isn't like that. It can grow in one particular area of energetic consciousness, if we call it that. We talked about etheric, that's just one level. We talked about creations, we talked about fifth dimensional reality. So the universe can grow, but at what point is the focus? It's only when your focus is in that new reality that it appears as if it's a new reality for you. Your memory of your focus, as we say, what you do at night time and at other times, what your higher consciousness does, is not part of your focus. But as soon as your focus is outside your earthly programs, the Gary program, for example, the interpretation or the focus is in a different way. So if we come back to energy and expression of energy, and we all know the trick, I suppose, the construct that where is the moment of now? You know, is it 1 second, a millisecond? And there's no difference between the past and the future. Therefore, the moment of now contains the past and the future. How long our consciousness sees or experiences it. But what your consciousness does on Earth is it experiences it on the has been, not the to be part of that energy creation. Notice I haven't said time. So it's all creation of energy. When you as an individual transmute your energy, your soul energy, so for example, you as a soul no longer decide that suffering serves your purpose. And you might say to me, I don't choose to suffer as a purpose. But when you think about it, you do, because everything is a creation. You could not be a martyr. Martyrdom is wonderful, isn't it? But in order to be a martyr, you have to suffer. You have to show other people that you're suffering. Oh, look at me. I am suffering for you. Aren't I wonderful? You are wonderful without the need to suffer. So when you change one of these consciousness programs that we talked about, one of these duality things, when you transmute that energy, you transmute the energy across the past and the future because you exist in both. So your soul is transmuting energy. So your soul energy is changed a past program. Let one of those go. You might see it also as changing past life experience. Karma. Be interesting to ask me some questions about karma and another session, Gary, because it's not what it appears to be.
Yeah, that's a program in itself.
So you are changing energy. So what you're doing is you're changing energy of the past and energy of the future. Now, when I said that memories will change, yes, they do, but you're changing the energy in that past expression. I hate to use the word past. I hate, oh, you don't need that. I'm finding your language quite difficult at times. I just get lost in it. Those are words. Hate is a word we would never use. So you can see how it affects your memory. You can see how it affects your future. And then it brings in a whole new set of questions. What is the future if I'm constantly changing it? What is the past if I'm constantly changing it? The whole thing is in flux. So you say, how can you tell the future? How can you tell what will be? And we have, in fact, already underline that in a way because you're seeing the future as an outcome. We are talking about energetic levels of creation. Experience is just experience. The now, here, what you're listening to, just an experience. We could say it's nothing more. It's quite wonderful as an experience, but the energetic levels of yourself that create these experiences and co-experiences, co-created experiences, are the experiences. So what we are involved with and what you are involved with are the creational levels that you then come to experience. And of course, you could think that your experiences are going to change, but they are being changed on the etheric and other vibrational creative realities. So what we're talking about is we're talking about experiences or outcomes, two different things. So the outcomes that will change to accord to energy that change. So we've got co-created energy, creating a different set of memory programs. Not only are they different set of memory programs, but the books will change as well.
Yes.
The whole thing is a construct that changes, and I'll click my fingers. As soon as the information changes, the energy of source is there, it changes. Change the information, you with energy, everything is energy, information, pulse, 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 pulse. Infinite pulses overlaying one another. So we've got source energy and information. Change the information and you change the reality. Of course, books can be changed. Of course, buildings can change. No thing can, your reality at this experiential level that soul experiences it is a hologram. And of course it can change. Just change the information. You just don't believe you can change the information. So that brings in another set of questions. What are our realities like when we know that we can change our experiences by changing our thought processes?
That's really, really interesting. So the book bit particularly, many people will know that the Bible has actually changed. There's passages within the Bible that are no longer the same as when, and I'm no Bible expert at all, but, you know, there are definitely changes in even the Bible. And so that has always been one of the big questions to me, that if the Bible can be changed, or the Bible changes via the reality, via the frequency, via the timeline, via the creational energy of us and everyone around us, then, as Isabella and myself have been talking about when we've been doing some of our programs, there is no fixed, correct truth. It's all fluid and it's all perspective. And that's a very important point to understand, that when people say it's written in this book and so it must be true, the book can be changed. The book is not a fixed object, even though we perceive it to be fixed. It's fluid, just like we are in a fluid reality that is constantly in flux.
Correct. I'm
Now,
just, I'm just thinking,
I'm going
oh,
to go, if we don't mind, to some of the questions, or one of the questions that I know everybody would want to ask from the first show straight away. We want to know this. Robert's already alluded to this as Robert and not channeling, that he had at night time, two sets of numbers came in, didn't quite understand what was going on, had a conversation with me. I pulled up some of my old presentations, explained, sorry, what the Chris code was, the Fibonacci was, how they overlaid and looked very similar. Showed him the numerology, and the numerology was what Robert had been shown during his sleep. Now, this is what I call the split. We have a split coming up. We have a 3D, where we're currently in a realm, and then we have a 5D, which is a different frequency, a different realm that we perceive as being a nicer realm that does not have the overlay of the Fibonacci, the control mechanism. And I'm certain that we will go into that control mechanism further in the future, because we certainly do, I believe, have an overlay that is not beneficial to us, which is why this split has enabled or become apparent, and we've created the split because of a need to get out of here. I also in the future want to ask about the Aztecs, because I have a really amazing, quite crazy theory about the Aztecs and what happened to them. And I think that would be a really interesting one as well. Now, there is a split in this realm currently that's only going to get wider. Can you ask, is there a percentage of the population in their current physical form that are going to transfer permanently from 3D to the 5D reality that we would term it in our understanding and our language, please?
Many people have said many things about the transition from third density to fifth density. Fourth density reality is where you exist at present. It contains the fifth and third dimensional realities combined so that they are in flux with one another, much like the mix that we talked about in the washing machine, depending on your perspective, what you are seeing as to what you would see. In terms of your bodies or moving to a fifth dimensional reality in that way, your physical bodies that you have at the moment wouldn't be part of fifth dimensional reality. They would vibrate at the reality of the fifth dimensional earth or consciousness. So, as we've said, you change the information, it changes. So, those that will inhabit a fifth dimensional reality in part already exist there, because part of your light bodies, part of your consciousness is involved in the creation and the evolution. It exists at that vibration on those levels. The experiential experience of the fifth dimension, as we said, is something different. So, what's going to happen? A lot of people have said lots of different things. I think if you detach yourself more from the idea of physical worlds, it's energy and thought. When you think about it as energy and thought, yes, it's moving from one room to another room, or suddenly realizing that you're in another room. We talked of memory timelines. When you're in a different reality, your awareness of your previous reality will serve no purpose. what purpose would it serve your new reality to be aware of the fullness of fear, or to use fear in the same way? So we're talking about consciousness levels, we're talking about etheric, mental, energetic levels and corresponding vibrations. So the transition to fifth at this particular moment in time is we've got this super mix going on. So as you see society becoming more and more fractured as third dimensional struggles and the negative forces within the third dimension are fighting against this change at an experiential level and at an etheric level. Whilst at the same time, within the fourth dimension, which is this multi-mix of fifth and third dimension, it is you could say that you are attuning to a fifth dimensional vibration by the way in which you think and the way in which you live and act. One of the things that we have said in the past, as have many others, is that if you think and act as if you are fifth dimension, as much as you can within your current construct, then for you, the other constructs not so much fade, they are still there. Third dimension still exists, but it doesn't affect you in the same way. So let me take Gary's example that he gave to Robert the other day, that what he does and the time that he spends, his focus was not on how can I afford to do this, but this is what I'm going to be doing. And that he allowed the universe to provide sufficient income for him to do what he's doing and spending the enormous amount of time that he's doing and creating these videos. So that's living in a different form of consciousness. So we've got this blended mix going on, as we say, a bit like that washing machine with bubbles of oxygen and hydrogen and water with oxygen and hydrogen, and depending on what we see. But of course, the soul and the soul experience is involved in all of it. What then is going to be the experience of the etheric change? I'm trying to use my words very carefully. In part, it depends upon what you're expecting to see. We said before it could be about fear. We have said to Robert before, and he's mentioned this in passing to Gary, is that there are not so much mental gateways or energetic gateways. Certain energies and certain thoughts will not fit in with another vibration. And if you try to force those in, they won't go through. If you hold on to some of those particular thoughts or patterns, you will have the experience of letting go of those thought patterns. And that's an experience. So whilst the change, when it comes, is, we would say, instantaneous, your focus won't perceive it as being instantaneous, because your focus will be upon any resistance that you have to those changes, things that you still desire to hold on to. A lot of the things in the human program will be de-energized merely by that fact. So the things that are being held onto are only constructs that are held onto consciously, if I put it that way, or because there is a need to. Don't get hung up on that, because there will be a lot of souls that will be moving without the need to hold on to, because at those super consciousness levels of themselves, in those etheric levels, those creations have already said our experience is going to be one of a smooth, instantaneous travel. So there will be different experiences. Some people will think that they will see a cleanup of Earth. And in many ways, the three-dimensional Earth does need a cleanup. It can be cleaned up in part from etheric levels, which change the outcomes of the third dimensional vibration. But as the third dimensional vibration dissipates, and that third dimensional reality of Earth will cease to exist as an energetic form, again, I'm using my words carefully, as an energetic form, as an expression. Sorry, as Robert's just popped back in, I've lost that connection.
No, no, no. We're talking about, or they were talking about, if I understand correctly from what's been spoken about previously, we create our own reality. And at the present time, we're in a flux between 3D and 5D, which we're going to call 4D. But it's our own minds that are preventing us fundamentally from going into the 5D because of the hang ups and tie ups and the old ways of thinking that we still have not learnt to drop fully yet. Now, we create our own reality. So when we go into the 5D, we create our own reality. So we can create the fact that we look the way we do now in the 5D, but we will not be the same 3D physicality. So we may look the same. We can create the fact that we look the same, but we will not be the same. We will be split. Notice that the hand connects all from 3D to 5D. The hand is consciousness, it's source. And from that, we will transition from one to the other seamlessly because the hand controls both fingers. Does that make sense? And is that what you're trying to portray in a very simplistic way?
That is a very good analogy. We wouldn't want people to get, as we say, too hung up on a fear that they would not be able to transition. Because when we make these explanations, you are perceiving them through your human constructs. Fear, of course, is one of them. What if I don't make it? What if something is in the way? And already you've begun to filter out the wonder of possibility. There will be those that will hold on to a 3D reality, but that 3D reality will lose its energy. Again, how they perceive the 3D reality losing its energy is down to them as co-creators or co-recipients of that. So we could say there are lots of timelines. We could say there are lots of constructs to put your focus into. That would be better to say. If some people wish to experience it as a form of self-destruction, then they will see it like that. If some people wish to see it as a continuation of 3D, they will do so because time isn't relevant. So the way in which their focus will see it, it won't exist, but their experience of it will be that it does, but it doesn't. So it's all down to perception. But again, I come back into reassure you that there's a lot happening with the interface between human constructs and fifth dimensional constructs. And we are de energizing those constructs. You are also de energizing those constructs at these etheric and higher light body levels. So your soul, your higher light body, is already deconstructing the energy and the attachment to these constructs in order to make the transition smoothly. We showed it to Robert as a series of doorways, and that you would meet different thoughts at the doorways. That's no longer a reality for him, but it was a way for him to perceive the transition of mental energy from one dimension to another, that different thoughts filtered through in different ways. So, in many respects, we are using metaphors as well to explain this transition. When someone might turn around and say it's energy and vibration, but actually, whilst it is, it doesn't give you the feeling of what is taking place. So a lot of what I'm saying is metaphorical because it's going to be about focus. And I know I am repeating myself, but dismiss from your mind's fear.
So if I can put something out there, we've just discussed the Mandela effect and how when we go to a different frequency, the memory we had is then therefore not a reality in that new frequency or that new vibrational energy. And so, as we get prepared or we prepare to go closer and closer to the point in which the transition happens, the Mandela effects will become more so as the 3D Mandela control mechanism drops away from us.
Brilliant. Thank you.
But we also have the ability to create our reality, everyone. So many of us see us going on to craft some kind of decontamination system, a journey to then get to the 5D. That is going to happen because we are going to create that because that's part of the conceptual nature of what we have decided is how we're going to go from one place to another, which allows the human mind to transition in a very smooth way, in a way that is understandable, and allows us then during that transition period in the craft to really drop all the preconceived ideas and really turn into that 5D frequency being that can then step forth onto the 5D, even though in reality, the point in which we put our foot on the craft is 5D. Would that be a very good analogy of what you've just said and a way to see it?
It is, but the reason I'm smiling is when. The when is also going to be before it happens. So it will be a future experience. I don't know, we talked about etheric creations of the experience, but it will be an etherically created future experience that we, or some of us, experience in the now. So That when can be here before the transition happens. So I know it sounds complicated, but it's to do with our focus. Our focus can go into different parts of our multidimensional self and our multidimensional experiences. So we change the outcomes, sometimes by being involved in a future outcome from a future etheric creation. So we're involved in them at all of these different levels. So yes, that's a good explanation, but the when isn't relevant because it happens, and because it happens as that experience, so that those that experience the transition more from a third dimensional reality through some of those, we won't call them struggles, changes of energy and changes of constructs. It's then a experiential experience on that lower level, if I call it that, to the fifth. So then when the transition happens from third to fifth, for those individuals, they will have already undertaken that experience. So for them, the transition will be instantaneous. They will just be returning to the when that they experienced before.
Yeah. So we're going to get more into time in a future show, without doubt, because it's quite complex, but it's also very simple. So everything, if we think of the Akashic records for an example, just as an example, the Akashic records show us everything that will be, everything that has been, and the now, all at the same time. And so what is being expressed at the moment is, in time wise, we've already gone into the 5D. It's already happened. We've already left. We've already experienced that. It's already happened in the future. We just need to catch up with that future as we drop the 3D, as we drop the when, the past behind us, if that makes sense. So this has already happened. We're here, and we're rapidly joining into that moment of crossover. And at the point of crossover, bang, it's instantaneous, and we will experience the experience that we expect to experience, to then allow us to then take the step. So for some, it will be just like walking through a doorway, no different. Others will be on the craft, being supported and helped for the transition to happen so that they can get that. Remember, this is an individual experience within a collective experience. We're all fractals of source, fractals of the creator, and as such, as a creational body will move forward, as individual fractals, it will be in an individual perception, just like it was in the car when one wanted food and one wanted clothes. The journey is the journey. It's how we see it and experience it to get to the end where we're going.
I think that's a good synopsis. And I think there's only so much that the mind can entertain at any one moment in order to process it, so that the experience then becomes processed, so that it filters into and affects the program or the earth program and alters it. So what's been said might take some time to assimilate. Some of what's been said might feel a bit foggy, but the energy of what's been said will be entrained within you. So you will know You will know whether it's truthful or not because you will either trust it or you won't trust it. You don't need to doubt it. It's either true or it isn't. It's whatever you choose to believe from what's being said. As a different being of experience in a different realm, I thought it might be useful just to spend a few moments, just quickly, to talk about the ways in which we experience. We've talked so far about your life, how your minds work, duality, how your minds create your reality. And in many respects, our minds create our reality. Robert has experienced our worlds and knows the wonder and the joy of them as he sees it in that way. For us, it is just an expression. I suppose that just is. But today we've talked about vibration, or it might even be the second or third video if Gary splits it up. Can you imagine that the way that we would think, for example, plants are vibration, animals are vibration. So we have gardens, but we would place plants in order of their vibration. So as we would walk down a pathway, we would hear a melody of the plants singing to us. How wonderful, you say. That might give you goosebumps or make you tingle, because that is a reality. And there are many other such wonderful things in our worlds, things to experience where hate and doubt don't exist, where love of one another exists as a primary. Robert said that when he came to our worlds in his human consciousness, he felt that he was loved above all other things. That was his experience from his human reality. We live in a community. We are still individuals. But the interface between myself and other Andromedans on my physical reality, if you call it that, is such that I wish the most for my fellow beings. I wish that they experience what they desire to experience, and that my life enables them also to have their desires fulfilled. And they desire the same for me. There is no wanting any less. So what we create from that vibration as a world is very different, and we live within that. There are many wonderful ways in which we work with plants and energy, the creation of things. We use technology to reinforce some of our creations also. We use technology to interface with our minds, but in a different way than what's being proposed for you at present. Our worlds, as I say, are very different. In terms of my experience, we know that the way that you are, that your timelines are created from the energy that you generate. So in other words, the co-created experiences of your world from your consciousness, from your energy, from transmuting. As an individual, what happens to you is your energy being returned to you. Not karma. Your energy is being re-experienced because you are a creator. You are re-experiencing what you have created. You can choose to change what you have created. That is the way that your timelines are formulated. That is the way your experiences are formulated. Your energy coming back to you to give you the experience of what you have created. It will come perhaps back in different ways, in different scenarios, but it will be the same energy that you work through or keep, however you desire. You tend to see these things as happening in advance, so you may reflect upon an experience and say, oh, in observation, I did that because of that desire. I can choose to live my life in a different way, and therefore I choose to change my energy, and therefore my timelines, what comes to me, will change. But the way in which you experience this at the moment is in hindsight, it is in reflection. We can live like that, and we do. But there are other levels of consciousness. And for example, because I know why I think the ways that I think, my subconscious is fully known to me. My consciousness is my program that I have created. It is not an unknown subconscious. So I act and create from that, as do others. So I also understand in advance an event that is going to take place. And I know the reasons why that event is going to take place. And for me, because I have no fear and it's a full understanding of information, for me, that is a sumptuous way in which to live. I'm pleased and I show my pleasure. It is not conceited. It is not conceited. I know because I know. And you are able to know because you will know. There are times when in your life you will suddenly know something. It's no different than what I'm trying to explain in a different way. But I'm trying to give a background to who I am, only in a slight way, because it gives you reference to the person that is giving you the information. But as I said, ultimately you will decide whether the information resonates with you. I'm not using the word trust. So it either resonates or it doesn't. It doesn't matter if you believe or don't believe me. It's information. So this is something that Robert hasn't talked about with Gary during these conversations, but something that I think is valuable is a perspective of the way in which we live. Because in this way, some of you are thinking, well, what does fifth dimensional reality mean? What does different way of being mean? And how is it experienced? And you're all being told how wonderful it is, but you're still trying to experience it through these earth filters, which don't correlate to the actual reality, if we call it that. So there may be times, hopefully, when I'm asked or I can offer you um, explanations of the way in which I live.
That would be very, 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 very interesting. I have got a huge amount of notes down here for future shows, future questions, because I think we've literally scratched the surface. And certainly when we go on to the time one, I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And we may even be able to nail down a potential period not time, period, when the 5D split will happen. We're certainly not going to cover it in this show because before we can even look at the period when it could happen, we have to understand the concept of time and how the Andromedans understand time and how the perception of us living in the past and not necessarily so much in the now and the future events. And I think that's going to be quite an interesting one to get our heads around alone, that then let alone moving forward in that. So I think that's a really good place to finish this first show as such. Um, we are going to split it in half. It's 2 hours, and there's so much information there that what I'll do is we'll drop this one day and the next day potentially, or over a weekend period that's coming up, so that the audience has the opportunity to watch the first half and then the second half straight after. I think that'd be very, very important. And I have to thank you very much, Rob. That's been absolutely amazing. And thank you very much to Antemedi and Olaka for answering the questions so openly and honestly. And I could feel the frequency and the energy coming off it of being truthful and genuine. I think the word's genuine. And so I really do appreciate your spending the time with us. And I look forward to it happening again. Are you happy to join us again for this, please?
Got Larka coming in a bit stronger now, so let's see what she's going to say. Oh, would you use the word love and benevolence in the summing up? Of course, we are pleased to work with you. We would call it that, to offer our insights. But you are extensions of us. You are part of our soul. We are only but helping our soul in its struggles, in its choices to have its experiences, to have the experience of struggling with experience. And we would say that there is no need to struggle. That is only a human construct of overcoming. We would say that overcoming is of itself also a human construct, understanding and love. And of course, we are very pleased, if we can use that word, to be involved with our soul's development. All of you, you are all connected to us. But let me finish perhaps on a slightly different expression. We and many beings are on higher dimensions. For I'm on a higher dimension than Antemedi. Many would use the word love. But your human word love has many facets to it. We remember a time that Robert came and we asked him questions in a forum, and we said, what is the human perspective on love? And he said, it is something that is traded. If I give you this, you will give me that. If I don't love myself enough, perhaps you can love me enough instead. So I would distance myself from the word love. We've talked about vibrations today, and my awareness is of what has been going on in these conversations. And awareness and focus is something that I would like to expand with Gary, because awareness and consciousness are different things entirely. So my awareness of what's been going on and my consciousness of what's been going on are different things. But because we've been talking about vibration, we've been talking about benevolence, finer vibrations, and I hope that in these conversations you have felt this essence that Gary has talked of. Let me use my words to sum up by saying, let our hearts sing as one.
That's beautiful.
She's gone.
So, everybody, let our hearts sing as one, and we'll catch up with you very soon for further and more episodes. I have a huge amount of questions. And with that, everybody, bye bye and love, light, and blessings. Bye, everyone.
Bye.